right, what do you say? It's 2 o'clock. Should we get started?
Do it.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited to be emceeing our webinar today, where we are joined by Ron, who's the founder and CEO of BLUEDOG. And as many of you know, Bravo and BLUEDOG partnered several months ago. And we decided it would be a good idea to host a webinar to really break down the 411 on a lot of things related to credit card processing, and also to talk a bit about how our integration works. We see a lot of questions in our Facebook forum and in talking with our customers as well as our prospects. We wanted to address some of those questions head on, and also give all of you an opportunity to be asking questions directly to Ron, who's an expert on everything credit card processing, where we may not be. So just a few housekeeping items before we jump in. As always, we are recording our presentation today. We will send you a recording of that presentation. And again, we love participation. We want to put on webinars where we feel like the people on the line are getting the most out of it. So certainly feel free to jump in the chat or the Q&A and ask questions, and we'll make sure to get all of your questions answered. And as far as the agenda today and what we're going to be covering, we want to jump in and talk about some misconceptions. As I mentioned, we see a lot of different questions and conversations that are going on in our social platforms, and the conversations we're having live and on the phones with our customers and our prospects. And so we're going to kind of put Ron in the hot seat and have him address some of those common questions or concerns that we're hearing. We also know that there are just some common frustrations that come with credit card processing. And so we want to also address those, but more importantly, provide some actionable best practices and ways to alleviate those frustrations. So Ron will be talking through both of those. And then we'll turn it over to Tally, who's going to talk about key benefits of BLUEDOG that some of you may not be aware of. And ultimately, some of the key reasons why we chose to partner with BLUEDOG. And then we also want to show you how the actual integration works. So that's what we're going to go through today. All right, so the common misconceptions. We have 4 of these that we're going to be addressing. And again, these come from a lot of the comments and questions that we're hearing directly in a variety of channels and forums. So we can go ahead and Ron, we're going to pose these to you. So the first one is, processors are taking all this money and making 100% of fees that are charged to customers. So we want to go ahead and give you a chance to address that, and perhaps even set the record straight a bit and educate us.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank both you, Kathleen and Tally, for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your customers and really, you know, as you say, set the record straight. So I have been in this business for 23 years now. And in my 23 years, I have often scratched my head as to how I got onto what's called the acquiring side of the business, which is what processors are on, versus the issuing side of the business. So inside of any transaction, you know, you're going to have the bulk of your fee for what's called interchange. Now, interchange is the fee set by the card brand, being Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express, for the type of card, whether it is a swiped card or a keyed card, whether it is a consumer debit card or whether it is a rewards card. All of those carry different interchange rates, and the lion's share of the revenue, or lion's share of the fee that a store is charged, is that interchange, and we make nothing on interchange. That all goes to the issuing bank. And so as I said at the beginning, I've always joked that I should have been on the issuing side of the business, because if a business is charged, 1.5%, 1.35% of that might be part of the interchange, which ultimately goes to the card that issued that. So that person walking in, if they're walking in with their local bank credit card, they're the ones receiving the lion's share of that revenue. There are 3 fees, though, associated with this that I think are important to note. So anytime you have a transaction that runs, whether it be card present in a store environment, whether it's card not present on an e-commerce transaction, or even through a mobile app, you still have these 3 different types of transactions. So the first is called a discount rate, which is that percentage that you see. So that percentage fee that's charged, that's known as the discount rate. And I know there's no discount in taking a card payment, so it's kind of ironic that it's called that, but that is where that comes from. The second thing is every transaction has to ping a network. We have to go out and get the authorization so that that card that we can verify that there's funds on there, available for us to debit from. And that transaction fee is kind of like the same thing of pinging a cell tower, or in the old days of copper phone lines, making a long distance call. So we have to verify that those are valid transactions. And then everybody has monthly fees. Now they can be charged in an assortment of ways, and there are some very creative ways in which these are passed on. But really the bulk of it is you have what's called an on-file fee. So to have an account set up on a platform, you're going to have a monthly fee to maintain that. You're going to have a regulatory compliance fee, which we can thank the Durbin Amendment in 2011 for, which means we have to report to the IRS on a quarterly basis how many sales are done, which is why you get those lovely 1099-Ks at the end of the year. That's part of the Durbin Amendment. And then the last thing is the PCI fee, which we're going to talk about a little later. But we have to make sure all of our clients are PCI compliant. So again, I listen, if we were able to charge and make the entire amount of that transaction, I assure you that the fees would be a lot lower to our end users. But the reality is that we're kind of like the ATM machine that charges people to take money. We only get a very, very small portion of that fee, and the majority of it we have to pay back out. So I hope that helps understand how this works a little bit better, and really, that 1.49% that you might be paying, where it all gets broken down to.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Again, if there's any questions about that, you can ask now. We'll also have time at the end for the Q&A. All right. The next thing that we hear people say many times is taking credit cards is too expensive. I don't even want to go there.
Yeah. So, it's funny. My wife always jokes with me that she tells me how much money she's saved me when she comes back and finds a sale. And, the amazing thing about credit cards is that you can buy things that most of the time you don't have cash to buy. And so by not taking credit cards, what ends up happening is you limit your customer's ability to purchase. Even something as simple as, let's say, and I know none of us are fast food restaurants, but even something as simple as going to McDonald's to get your meal, to supersize it, that costs money. And if you only have, say $8 in your, in cash, it limits what you can buy. So by not taking credit cards, two very important things happen. Number one, a customer that might be willing to spend $300 may be limited to spend only $80 or $100 or whatever it is that they have in their wallet or available to them in cash. The second thing it does is that your overall sales are going to increase. So you'll not only see that expansion in your average sale, you'll see that expansion in your overall sales, because that same logic applies, that customer that might come in there and be able to spend $80 if they had cash, by being able to accept cards, you're getting that expansion of that average ticket, which ultimately is going to increase to more sales that you take. So I get that there's a cost of taking credit cards, and I get it's super inconvenient and not fun to pay. Trust me, I've been hearing it for 23 years. I didn't invent the system. I just work in it. But I can tell you this definitively and factually, your sales will go down if you don't take credit cards, for the simple fact that most people don't walk around with cash. And now that we're in this pandemic, that's exacerbated even more, because nobody wants to touch cash, and contactless payments, is really what everybody wants. They don't want to even hand a credit card to somebody. So to me, the concept of not taking credit cards is just not viable. There's just no way that can make sense in a business in today's day and age.
I loved it when we were talking about the presentation. I was taking a look at this. I thought it was just really prudent, because I know, like you said, anytime that there's a hard cost that people know about, right, and they see the fee and they're trying to think about ROI, what you're talking about here is the opportunity cost of not doing it, right? And that sometimes gets left out of the equation when people are considering making sometimes these types of shifts, is what's the opportunity cost of not making that choice. So I think this is great that you put this in here.
Yeah.
All right.
Go
ahead.
No, I say I couldn't agree more with you. And I, when I started in this industry in the late 90s, which makes me sound, I think, a lot older than I really feel, you did have to convince people to take credit cards. But I think that those days, everybody at this point should understand the value of taking credit cards, and hopefully, just a simple illustration. And this is a Google search away for anybody that wants to fact check these things. These are all, very, very public information available today.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's talk about credit card equipment. And, many times we hear this is expensive, or I can't afford this.
Yeah. So credit card equipment for us is not really a revenue center. We look at credit cards as kind of a means to get, processing. Our goal is to get processing. And there are a ton of companies out there that have any which way you want to sell equipment. The reality is that a terminal, regardless of brand, regardless of manufacturer, they're all about the same price. Anywhere from $220 to $320 is what your cost of your terminal is. Then you got to buy your cord package. Similar, if you buy your printer from Staples, it doesn't come with that USB cord that you need to actually print something. That's super frustrating. So then you got to go buy another $12 cord. So we have to buy the cord package that goes with it. Then we have to get that terminal to us. We have to program it. We have to do what's called an encryption on it because of EMV, which is contactless cards and being able to dip it. We have to actually do a bank encryption, which means we have to pay the bank for their encryption keys to be able to do that. And then we have to ship the terminal to the location. So we have 2 sets of shipping, cords, encryptions, downloads. Let's not even talk about labor to make all that stuff happen. And then we got to get there. So we make, candidly, about $20 a terminal. We're not getting rich off terminals. Terminals are really just a way for us to ensure that we can make sure our customers and our partners like Bravo have a way to be able to get processing into the hands of the people that use it. Our revenue is earned on a very small nickels and dimes business. We have to process billions and billions of dollars for us to keep our lights on and do what we do. Literally on counts, we're making, less than 0.1% at times. And so it's a very thin margin business. Equipment is, as I said, it's not a revenue center out there. To make matters even worse for us, Bravo is very good at negotiating. I will tell you that. They have negotiated a hard set price on the terminals, but we often will even have promos that we've granted to Bravo on the top of that. So you'll see promos come out from us from time to time, discounting them even more. Anything less than $379, we are paying you to take that terminal. And there are many of the stores out there that have taken advantage of some of these promos, especially in the early part of when we released this program. Some other things that are really amazing about our terminals that I think are super important, and this is something that actually came up on the Facebook thread. If it wasn't this week, it was last week. Most terminals come with a 1-year manufacturer's warranty, and that is purely from a defect of the terminal. Now it's technology, and those of you who have a cell phone, which is probably everybody on this call, or a computer, there have been times where something broke. Oftentimes when it breaks, it's not breaking because of a manufacturer's defect, it's breaking because we dropped it or something happened. So we have created, let me take a step back. So the way we make money is processing. So if you don't have a terminal, we can't make money as a business. We have to ensure that you are up and running. So about 7 years ago, we created our what we call forever warranty program, which says if you got a terminal from us, we will warranty it forever. As long as you're processing with us, we don't care that the terminal manufacturer may have, their warranty may have lapsed. We will always make sure that you have a terminal and as quick as possible. So we created a swap program that says, regardless of how the terminal broke. Now, let me put some context on that. Maybe it was a manufacturer defect. Maybe you were having a Diet Coke and the bottom fell out. Maybe you had an irate customer that came in and kicked it off of the counter, or maybe it got, just damaged from, a roof that exploded. Who knows how it happened? No matter what, if you send us pieces and parts of that terminal back, we're going to replace it. No questions asked. I'll give you a great story real quick. We have a Burger King chain that processes with us in Southern California. They've got about 130 stores, and we had a store that kept having a terminal break, and they kept calling us. And finally, we said, listen, can you send us back that terminal just so that we can see what's happening, because we keep having these issues. And it was in the drive-through, and they leaned over and they bumped it into the fryer. And so when they sent it back to us, we had a deep fried terminal. Now, I hope they changed the fry oil. That's a different topic, not related to this, but we replaced it, no questions asked. And that's a great thing. So we have to overnight that terminal to you, which costs us about $35 to $40, depending on where you're located. Then we have to get that old terminal back, and then we have to refurb that terminal so that we can, if it's salvageable, try to get it back in operation. So again, not a revenue center for us. We have, remember, the cost of the terminal on top of that. So we're inside of that $99 swap. Again, this could be tomorrow or this could be a year from now, and it doesn't matter how it breaks. We'll replace that for you, even if that terminal has no warranty on it. So that's an amazing program. I know it's super frustrating if a terminal breaks. One really important thing that I forgot to mention on the Facebook thread when I saw that is plug them into a surge protector. Now, I live in Florida. For those of you that have never been here, we have some pretty amazing lightning storms. but it is probably the highest per capita TV fails in any state in the country. There are more TVs that break due to lightning strikes of houses than any state in the union. And it's because most TVs are plugged into, if they're hanging on a wall, they're plugged into an outlet and there's not a surge protector behind it. So if you have a terminal, plug it into a surge protector so that if you do get hit by lightning, it doesn't fry the terminal, because that will happen. And we will replace it, but it's super frustrating. And we don't want to have you pay anything if you can avoid it. So yeah, that's kind of how our terminal works. And again, it's a very low cost way to have processing in your store through this integrated solution.
Thank you for that was detailed. You talked us through everything. That's great though. It's nice to have the education and the context to understand where that $399 is going, why that charge is what's being incurred, and then some of the things that BLUEDOG has put in place really to just make the experience as good as it can be, even if mishaps happen. All right, and the last thing that we hear, the last concern that we hear is, hey, if I change processors, there's going to be all sorts of interruptions to my business.
Yeah, so I would tell you, Kathleen, that could be a legitimate concern if we had just done this and you were a beta customer or something like that. But we've kind of well gotten past the testing phase. And there were some of the stores, maybe some of them even on this webinar today, that were brave enough to be part of those first 1 or 2 stores that adopted the technology. But we've got hundreds and hundreds of stores now using this integration. If there were kinks in the beginning, we have more than worked through them now. Tally and her dev team have been amazing in creating this integration. The UI, the experience that you'll see later on, is really just superb. There's literally almost a zero downtime when changing over. We can have you up and running within 30 minutes. One of our techs walks you through everything from start to finish. If you're sitting here watching this and thinking to yourself, well, I don't even handle the day-to-day, don't even worry about it. When one of our team members calls you, just give them the person to talk to. They'll work with anyone in any of your stores if you have multiple locations. Again, we don't make money if we can't get you up and running as fast as possible. Our job is to make sure, number one, that we get you up and running, and number two, we got to make Bravo look good. Tally brought us in, and our job is to make sure that we make Bravo look good. So we work very hard to do that. And while we're not perfect, we like to aspire for it.
That's my whole job too. She's such a taskmaster. All right, awesome. So before we move on to common frustrations, those were the 4 common misconceptions that I had put together in this presentation. But Tally, Ron, are there any other kind of concerns that you see in trends, questions that you hear that you'd want to address at this time? Otherwise, for those of you on the line, certainly feel free to drop any other questions if there's anything that you're confused about into the chat and Q&A before we move on to the next section.
Yeah, Kathleen, if I can just add one thing to that, I think that I would just urge anybody who has received a call from one of my team members or is unsure, we are very transparent, and there's no such thing as a question that will go unanswered. We may not have the answer when you ask, but if you're unsure and you're nervous about the transition, we're here to make sure that you feel comfortable with it. So don't be bashful. We welcome questions. We welcome challenges. We make things right if something doesn't go right. And many of you I've been on the phone with personally or done a video call with personally. We are literally here to stand behind this, and 100% will back up and make sure that we deliver on the promise that we made to Bravo.
That's awesome. We did good choosing a good partner then, Ron. All right, so we'll move into our next section, which are, we know that there's some common themes around frustrations as it relates to processing. And so, Ron, I'm just going to turn it over to you to go through and address some of those frustrations, and then share some of the best practices to help kind of mitigate that or alleviate those things.
Absolutely. So chargebacks. Chargebacks are incredibly frustrating. And for those of you that don't know what a chargeback is, let me educate you a little bit on it. So if you are a customer of a store, let's call it a Bravo store at this point, and I walk into your location and I buy something and I get back home, and for any reason I am not happy, or let's say I bought it online or I bought it through a mobile app, I have 6 months from the date of that transaction being completed. I'm going to explain that in a second, to do a chargeback with my bank. A chargeback means I called my bank and I said, I either didn't make this charge, I didn't get what I was promised, or my delivery of my service is not yet fulfilled. So this gets a little sticky in the pawn world. So the last transaction is sometimes a moving thing, especially on layaway, especially on any sort of payment that somebody might be making towards a product. Because let's say there are 10 payments that someone's making towards a product, they have a chargeback ability from the 6 months from the date of the last payment. So that's 6 months from the 10th payment that they can do a chargeback. Now that doesn't mean that they're going to win, but that means that it can cause you aggravation. And I can't do anything to prevent that from happening. By accepting cards, this is one of the things that you as a business owner are accepting, is that you understand that chargebacks are a part of business and that you will work diligently with your team to make sure that you reply to chargebacks. Now, chargebacks have a really specific rule set behind them that we'll talk about here in a second. But I think one of the things that's really important is to make sure that you follow some best practices. Now, e-commerce is a little bit different. And I know that the dev team at Bravo has done some amazing things to thwart off any sort of criminals that are trying to do some nefarious things with cards. But there still can be a time where someone is going to dispute their charge, whether it be card present or whether it be card not present. One most common thing that people don't think about is the descriptor that shows up on the customer's statement. Now, this is probably something we need to do a better education about, but that DBA field that you fill out when you set up your account, you're going to have two fields. One is going to be your legal corporate name. The second is going to be your doing business as, or your DBA name. That DBA name is going to be what shows up on your credit card descriptor unless we know otherwise. There is a field on there that has the alternate option of what you'd like it to show, but this is where it gets sticky. If you have one name you go by online and one name you go by in your store, you're going to need a second account to make it work that way. You can't have two descriptors for one account. So just be aware of that as you're setting up your account. Most of the time, the DBA is what you want to show up on your credit card statement, but not always. So if, for example, your name is XYZ Pawn and you're doing business as, I can't think of a creative name, which is why I'm not in the pawn space, but Pawnomatic, whatever. And if that's a name, I apologize. But if that's something you're doing business as, then you should probably know what name your customers know you by. So if you have XYZ Pawn on your store, but you're going by this DBA, when they get that descriptor, it's not going to match, and that could cause a problem. The second thing is that every card brand has a really tight time frame in which you can reply. Now, we send that communication to you either via mail or email. It's whatever you prefer and whatever you set up on the account. We can do it either way. But depending on the card brand, you have 10 to 14 days to reply. If you don't send that reply in within 10 to 14 days, it is what's called an unwinnable chargeback. Doesn't matter what your response is, you won't win it because the card brands say, if we don't have this by this date, there's no refuting this charge. So it's very, very important that you reply in a timely manner. The other thing is having a clear refund policy. So at the point of checkout, or whether that's e-com or whether that's retail, make sure your customers know if there is a refund policy. It's okay not to have one, or all sales are final, but you need to specify that because it's going to help you eliminate chargebacks that might happen. In a retail environment, it's very important, especially now with chip cards being the standard, that if there is a chip reader, or excuse me, a chip on that card, to use it. And if it doesn't read, I would ask for an alternate card. Because if you have a chip card that you swipe, that becomes an unwinnable chargeback. And when this happened in October of 2015, you had all sorts of fraudsters running around going and buying things from stores that they knew hadn't upgraded to EMV yet, buying stuff and then doing chargebacks knowing that there was no winning them for the store. It was a real problem. So if there is a chip, make sure you take the chip. If it's not reading, I'd ask for a different card, just as a best practice. And then when you do get a chargeback, there's nothing that prevents you from calling the customer direct to try to resolve it. You still have to reply to that chargeback, but there's nothing that prevents you from going to that customer to communicate directly with them. Again, communication is always going to be one of the best practices, and there are definitely fraudsters out there. But again, most of the time, if we can eliminate some of the obvious things like the descriptor and the time frame and the refund policy, it's going to make your life a lot easier on chargebacks. All right, so let's talk about PCI. PCI, outside of chargebacks, is probably the #1 most frustrating thing for customers. Now, for those of you that don't know how long PCI has been around, in 2004, PCI was brought in as a best practices. And I should probably clarify what PCI stands for. So PCI is technically PCI DSS, which is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. It came out in 2004, and it was set aside as a best practice for businesses as to how to manage card data to ensure that you don't have a breach. Then shortly thereafter, somewhere around the same time that there was a antitrust litigation, I believe Walmart was involved in the Retailers Association, they came out with not just best practices, but stern guidance on how to manage card data inside of your store. And then what happened is they said, if you're not PCI compliant, you, the store owner, could be held responsible for a breach, which if you've watched the news, some of these breaches can be staggering as far as how big and how deep they are going. So what we have done is we've taken the stance that we need all of our customers to be PCI compliant. We need to do it for a couple reasons. Number one, we want to make sure that we're complying with the data security standards of the industry, but more importantly, we want to absolve our customers of risk. If there's a breach, we want to deal with it. We don't want you to be involved with it at all. So PCI is the first step to ensuring that you can absolve yourself from almost every single type of risk out there with regards to PCI. And the other part that we've done is, we're big enough that we could manage PCI ourselves, but we made the conscious decision in 2016 to not manage it ourselves and to use a third party, so that if there ever was a breach, we had an arm's length and we could work with our PCI partner and show that, look, we're even bringing on a third party to validate that our PCI security standards are being followed. And we made a conscious choice to do that. So we pay this company to come in once a year and make sure that all of our customers are compliant. So we do charge a $99 PCI compliance fee. What this covers is your SAQ, which is your self-assessment questionnaire. Now, 90% of the businesses out there are going to become PCI compliant after the SAQ, based on how you answer it. Now, you have to answer it truthfully. It's one of those things that the honor system is very much in play, and you don't want to not give accurate information, because if there ever were a breach, that would come back to bite you. But you want to just fill out the SAQ as honest and accurately as you can. Now, they're annoying and they're frustrating, and we can't fill it out for you. We can guide you. We have a whole department that, if you call us, we'll walk you through what the questions mean. We'll give you guidance on how most answer the question based on the type of business, but we are not allowed to fill that out for you. So, and it must happen once a year. Once you fill that out, assuming that nothing additional is needed, we will provide you with a certificate that will verify that you are PCI compliant. And if there is a breach, we will provide that to whichever bank is coming to us about the breach, and we will show that you are PCI compliant, and then it becomes a problem that we have to deal with the issuer, as opposed to bringing you in. There are times, about 10% of the time, that based on the answers to your questions or how your IT is set up in your store, that you might require an additional scan. And what we do is we have this company that will actually do vulnerability scans on your computer and show you if there are things that we need to tighten up, either from a firewall standpoint or from any sort of potential vulnerability that your business could hold. And again, this third party helps to ensure not only that we can make you PCI compliant, but helps to absolve you from risk. And again, the last thing you want to do for the equivalent of $8 a month or $99 a year, you can ensure that peace of mind of not having to deal with it in the unlikely event you have a breach. And that's a big deal, especially because there's a lot of people out there trying to do bad things, and we spend all of our time trying to create great products. And on top of that, we have to spend all of our time making sure that everyone is safe and secure. And fraudsters spend all of their time finding ways to penetrate people's systems. So it's very important to make sure that you are PCI compliant, and that's the way to do it. Yeah, I think we're ready for the next slide there. Okay, so non-PCI. Now, non-PCI is something that we use as a deterrent. We do not want to process for companies that don't want to be PCI compliant. Our stance on it is we can never mitigate the risk that we have with PCI with profit. We make a very insignificant amount of money. It's a tiny, tiny sliver of a percentage, we need to make sure that we absolve ourselves and that we secure our customers. So PCI is really a way for us to encourage our customers to be PCI compliant. We give you 90 days from the day you sign up to fill out the SAQ. We send you a postcard reminder, 2 emails, and a phone call follow-up. 4 times that we're going to touch base with you, reminding you that this SAQ is due. Then on the 4th month, if you aren't PCI compliant, you will see a $24.95 non-PCI fee that will immediately disappear the second you fill out that SAQ. But it's really, important that you fill it out, because what's ultimately happening by not doing that PCI is you're putting both of us at risk, and our job is to protect you. And I can only do so much for you. Like I said, I can't fill out the PCI compliance certificate for you because I am not in your store. I don't know what really happens in there, but again, this is a way for us to help motivate you to get to there. There's also a significant cost. If we have to defend a customer that had a breach and wasn't PCI compliant, there's no $24.95 fee that we could ever charge that would even come close to the cost that we're going to incur to defend you. So, we utilize this to, create some sort of a resource so that if we do have to defend our customers, that we have some resources to help you, because it's not in the tens of dollars, it's in the tens of thousands of dollars that we end up, having to defend our customers. So PCI compliance, non-PCI compliance, both necessary evils in our business, and something that is super important. Again, it'll take you 5 to 10 minutes to fill it out the first time. The second time you'll whiz right through it because you'll know how to do it. It's really important and is just a necessary part of doing business in a responsible way to accept cards in your store.
So the takeaway, $8 a month to absolve yourself from the risk as a business owner, get the additional scans and the support if you need it, $25 a month to not be compliant and assume that risk.
You got it.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you.
I like the delta, $17, Kathleen, to have peace of mind.
Exactly. All right, Ron, thank you so much for addressing some of the common misconceptions as well as the frustrations. It's highly educational. Tally, I'm going to turn it over to you for the last portion, where I'm going to have you talk about benefits of using BLUEDOG and then actually show us how the integration works.
Awesome. We have a quiet audience here today, so I just wanted to remind you guys, we do have a Q&A and we do have chat. I've been moderating that since Ron and Kathleen have been talking. Nobody posted, now I'm talking. If you want to start posting questions in there, Ron and Kathleen have access to go ahead and answer those questions. So if you have questions for those two individually, go ahead and post them in there. I want to roll this back to 10 years ago when we first started developing Bravo, and we made a fairly strategic decision not to include credit card processing and an integration with a credit card processor, because we believed that technology was going to become available in the coming years, that we would be basically supporting dead code, and that there would be a company that would come along that fit our vision and where we thought the industry needed to be. We spent about 6 years looking for a partner for credit card processing. We were all the way in due diligence and contract with 4 of those companies. The 5th one was BLUEDOG. So we spent a really long time searching for the perfect partner, not only somebody that prioritized pawn shops and gun stores and had their back, but also a company with similar values and a company that we knew that would support our customers, because that is our mission, is to really delight our customers. And so when we came across BLUEDOG and I met Ron, it was really like the perfect partnership. It took about 9 months to spec and scope this entire project out. And the reason why that's so complex is because we've got mobile payments, e-commerce payments, and point of sale payments in store. And so that complexity, weeded a few of the other companies out, whereas BLUEDOG and their dev team was able to accommodate a really complex architecture in our system. And after that time that we spent scoping and speccing, it took us another 9 months to develop the thing and to get it delivered. We had it in beta and we rolled it out in phases, and it wasn't perfect. And we knew that going into an 18-month project. They don't usually come out on the first try perfect. We spent the next 3 to 5 months really listening to feedback and making both changes on the BLUEDOG side, but also on the Bravo user interface side to make sure that this was going to be the best possible integration of all integrations possible with Bravo and a credit card processor. So I wanted to set the stage. That was a really common request that we heard for a really long time. It wasn't a partnership that we took lightly because we know that the friction can be high and we needed a company that was going to delight our customers and that's their mission as well. So there's some benefits of using BLUEDOG through Bravo. And like I mentioned, you can use it for mobile pawn, you can use it for online, and you can use it for in-store sales. And obviously the more channels that you include and allow BLUEDOG to process your credit cards, the more efficient and the more these benefits benefit you. So the first is saving time. So definitely one of the most significant benefits of credit card processing is just the number of hours you save by not having to manually enter credit card information into Bravo. And so that is going to allow your employees to spend more time with the customer, perhaps post items for sale, maybe chat on the mobile app, all of these other things that employees can be doing besides manually entering numbers and perhaps creating more errors and typos, which is the second huge benefit of using BLUEDOG. Because human beings aren't perfect, and no matter how many times you double check the amount, inevitably there's going to be typos, maybe double entry, maybe applying maybe like an incorrect number from the screen into the machine. And so once those mistakes are discovered, they're really frustrating for your customers, but also it's going to take a lot of time to reconcile it at the end of the day. And that's ultimately also going to cost you money. And so with the integrated processing through Bravo, your payments are seamlessly passed through them, and all of the billing reconciliation of that is going to appear on your end of day reports, and there's no more manual reconciliation of those two things. The third thing is just an improved workflow. So depends on where you have the terminals within your store and how your employees are walking around the store and doing those double things and the receipt printing out of here and there, and the way that workflow is happening throughout your store. And so with the integration, which I'm going to show you in 1 second, basically you just swipe the card into Bravo and BLUEDOG is going to take care of the rest. So there's no double swipe that you have to do. Also, this is a huge benefit. Ron and I talked about this a bit yesterday, is that you only have to have one single merchant account. And so what that's going to do is you're going to be able to eliminate fees for having multiple different accounts in multiple different places for all of your different channels. So you're going to have a streamlined approach, one single merchant account for your in-store, for your online sales, and for your mobile sales and payments that are happening. And so that is huge. It's going to save you money and also just time and reconciling and having multiple statements to look at all of the time. And then the last thing is what steered us into BLUEDOG to begin with was really looking for a company that's firearm friendly and that's pawn shop friendly. And many payment processes are not. We disqualified many leads as far as when we were looking for processors because of those two things. Whether those policies were written or just embedded in the culture of those companies. And BLUEDOG was a breath of fresh air as far as friendliness towards pawn shops and firearm stores go. And so that was a huge benefit, and a benefit obviously that our customers get to take advantage of. So those are some of the key benefits. Doesn't look like I have any questions on that so far. So I'm going to run through the end of a transaction, and it's actually super simple. So if you don't have BLUEDOG working yet for the in-store processing, all you're going to do is at the end of the transaction, this screen should look familiar to you if you're a Bravo customer. You're going to be able to click on credit card. And then what's going to pop up is just this little BLUEDOG thing. It's going to say credit card BLUEDOG. You're going to put in the amount and click OK. It's going to process it for you at the same time that it's actually going to be printing all of the receipts. So as soon as you click save, it's going to print whatever tickets. If you've got a pawn ticket or a buy ticket that's going to print, it's going to do that. And then it's also going to print your labels and all of the things that happens with an end of transaction process. So it's really just these 5 seconds within this part of the transaction where you're going to go ahead and click credit card. You're going to select that, start the payment. It's going to ping it, and then you click save and you're done. And so that just sheer amount of time and seconds, if you calculate every credit card statement, every credit card that you're taking per every day, and you take that amount and you reduce it to a few seconds, that's just going to free up minutes, possibly hours, for your employees each day. Obviously, the UI on the mobile pawn side is super simple, and so is the e-commerce side. So they're just going to process it like a normal credit card. They're going to type in their credit card and it's done. They're not going to know that it's coming through BLUEDOG. It's going to look like every other checkout that you have when you sign, buy something online or on a mobile app. So that's the way that that works. And now we're going to open it up to a Q&A. So does anybody have any questions? Does anybody need more information? If that was helpful, if you want to put a Y in the chat for yes, it was helpful, so that we know you're here and awake, that would be awesome.
Or feel free to put the letter grades in. We typically have a poll that we launch and ask you to grade us. So feel free to put a letter grade in. We have thick skin, but we love A's. We love A's too.
Love A's, but if it's worse, then I guess we'll take it. Okay, Amanda has an awesome question. So if a customer needs support help, what's the best way about getting the pawnbrokers this information? It really depends on where the issue is happening, but one thing for sure, you can post in Facebook. Ron and I have been sort of tackling that. If you do a video or something like that, the best way to get in touch with us is just submit a case through the Solution Center. If it's something that Bravo troubleshoots, we'll troubleshoot it on our side. Otherwise, we work hand in hand with BLUEDOG to get your issues resolved. So that's sort of how that works. Okay, here's a question. I don't know what either of these things mean. What about the chime cards in BLUEDOG?
Chime cards, I'm not familiar with what we're referring to there.
Kimberly, can you give us a little bit more information on chime cards in BLUEDOG? Please. All right, as she's typing, are there any other questions or comments? If you need support or if you want to get signed up, you can go ahead and post your information, your store code, and we'll reach out to you after this. Okay, so that means that cards that don't have a name on them.
Okay.
So is that like, are you talking about Visa cards without a name?
Like prepaid cards?
I think what she's referring to are true ATM cards, which are unbranded cards, they're not as prevalent today. And Kimberly, if that's not accurate, please feel free to send that message through. But I think what you're referring to is an unbranded credit card. And this is mostly given to somebody when they go to their bank they set up their checking account. Just like all of us, we get a debit card. And most of the time that debit card has a Visa or MasterCard logo on it. However, that comes with it a credit line that's being extended to us as part of that card. And that's what's called a check card. If somebody maybe has credit that doesn't warrant to extend a credit line, or a bank first wants to set them up for a true ATM card, then they would do an unbranded credit card. You can still accept those inside of your Bravo POS, but they must go through as a debit transaction, which means you must have debit set up on your account, which is the default that we set up on all Bravo customers, but you'll need to make sure that they know their PIN number to be able to accept that. You won't be able to take it like a traditional credit card.
And then what about bank gift cards?
So most bank gift cards come with a Visa or MasterCard logo on them, and you would be able to run them just like you could any other credit card. If it's an unbranded gift card, then that probably would, again, unless it's an ATM gift card, which is not the normal way in which that would be issued, that could pose some challenges. But again, assuming it's a card branded gift card, you get it from wherever and it's got that Visa or MasterCard logo on it, it should be fine. Another way to look at that is turn over the card to the backside. You're going to see names like Interlink or Maestro or any numbers, Star Network. Those are debit networks. If you see any of those on there, those should also work through your through your Bravo system, no problem, even if it doesn't have the front branding on it.
Awesome. And then Gail, to answer your question, Bravo does decipher what type of card it is. And so that goes into the reconciliation piece where you're not saying, hey, we accidentally ran a Visa or we put in it's a Visa, but it was really a MasterCard, and now you're trying to track down that at the end of the day. So yeah, Bravo's gonna determine that. So, and we'll put it in the correct category for you.
Eric, I saw your question in Q&A. Yes, I will send you follow-up information you're asking for right after this presentation today.
And then another question, is there any way for the store to look on the terminal to verify a charge without calling? So, yeah.
So I was going to say, it depends on if I assume it's a charge that has run for the day and hasn't settled yet, because there's two ways to look that up. And if you're assuming you're using the integration already, we have a portal that you can log into to look at live transactions so that you can see even cards that haven't settled yet. If you're not familiar with how to do that, I know that Bravo support is set up to be able to help walk you through how to get into that portal. But that's usually the best way, because until the card is settled, most of the time the system wouldn't even recognize that it exists because it could still be voided. But we have given all Bravo customers real-time access to see transactions inside the portal pre-settlement.
Awesome. And then I have another question from Robert, basically asking, you know, what's the overall percentage they pay in monthly fees? He's currently paying around 2%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the standard Bravo program is 1.49% for swipe transactions, 2.98% for keyed transactions, and then the monthly fee of $9.95. And I think the landing page that is co-branded that has that should have that pricing listed on as well, that we can certainly send that link out to you.
Thanks. All right, awesome. So we'll stick around for a few more minutes if there's any other questions. But if there aren't, I wanted to thank Kathleen for organizing this and putting it on. Thanks, Ron, for joining us, and thanks for being like such an awesome, stellar partner. We are so lucky to have found you. And thank you to everybody that joined this and participated. We are so happy to have you here, to have you engaged and interested in this integration.
Thank you, everybody. Ron, thank you so much.
Thank you both. I'm blushing, so I'll go now.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.